Hi everyone. In this module, we are going to discuss about the edit checks. We have already discussed about the programming part of the edit checks in the module ECRF designing an edit check preparation document or module. So here edit checks are the checks or rules which would be programmed to raise discrepancies if the clinical trial data is not valid or accurate as per the study specific requirements of protocol. The data entered into the EDC system is validated for clean, correct, complete, and valid data as per the study-specific requirements. Why are edit checks created? So the checks are performed in clinical trial data to identify and validate the clean and dirty data obtained, and they are created to get errorless or to minimize the error rate data for the clinical study. So, at which phases the edit checks would be created? Annotated document is in compliance with the final protocol. Once the database design is final or near to final, once these activities are completed, the edit check programming or the document preparation will start. So, and again, when the study is live, if any amendments happens to the protocol and that is going to affect your data points which are going to be collected or any other edit checks which are already placed in the system needs to be modified, under these conditions, again the edit checks would be created or modified. So for this, the post-production change request form and the relevant document also needs to be updated. So points to consider while creating edit checks. So the DM team will create the edit check during the startup phase. The list of edit checks would be mentioned in the edit check specification sheet. Edit checks must be simple language and easy to understand because the site team is going to respond to the same while performing data entry in the conduct phase. The check should fire only when the data is not as per the protocol study or as per the CDSS and logical consistency checks of data across different CRFs. Just here mentioned a simple layout of how the document should look like. So which will have a check ID or a rule ID and which event or CRF it belongs to and the question prompt. In case of the checks is against or which are from the cross references form, that is for example when there is a check is created between two different forms or more than one form, then again the cross reference form and which visit it belongs to and the data item would be mentioned, and the logical description, because for the programmers they have to identify what to understand the logic what is required to be programmed. Then what type of edit check it is. It is a manual check or it's a computer generated check, that is your system generated check. And the error message or validation message should be mentioned. And whether the check is implemented, this would be completed by the programmer and again same would be verified by the team. Contents of edit check specification sheet. Rule ID. So a unique identifier for every check needs to be identified with a rule ID. Scheduled label or event label. The name of the visit or the event identifier in which the rule is related or is identified. Then the form label, on which particular CRF form the rule is applied. Question prompt or the data item, so the point where the message or your discrepancy will pop up. Cross-reference visit name or item name. So it refers to that if a check is identified with a prerequisite data, then the reference of which particular visit the data is linked or which form or which item name. Those informations would be identified in the cross-reference visit name or item name section. Logic or check description. Rule check described in the logical expression. Edit type. Auto-generated by system or manually generated. Manually generated means that the query will be raised during the manual review process. Error message or validation message. The text which will prompt the question. Implementation. Whether rule check is applied in the programming. Whether it is implemented to identify the same. Modified or recommended by. User who modifies or recommends the check. Comments from the reviewer on the particular check. Criteria for edit checks. Rules or edit checks are prepared in the system Missing edit checks. If any data is missing from a particular CRF, example, missing values for particular data point in a CRF or in a visit name. Valid ranges edit checks. If any data is not captured in the defined range requirement, example, BP, age range, etc. And the same form label dependent edit checks. If any two or more data points has to be checked from the same CRF. For example, a vital assessment is performed. If it is selected yes, then if the date is not entered, then the error message should appear. Similarly, when the diary card is dispensed as yes and visit is not mentioned, again any adverse event is occurred and a adverse event number is not captured. So these are all the simple checks which would be within the same. And again, for cross-reference form, for example, in the demographic event, if the gender is mentioned as male and was the pregnancy test performed in the pregnancy reporting form is mentioned as yes, then this is a contradictory statement. So the error message will appear for the same. And when for example, if a randomization visit is before the screening visit date, and again, the randomization visit date is before screening visit date, is a simple text message which will be appearing. Violations. When the data entered in a particular field is against the protocol study, it is violating the protocol standards and requirements. So in such cases, the error message appears for the subject ID to exclude them. For example, if any of the inclusion-exclusion criteria, the subject is not eligible, then the system will show that the subject should be excluded. The approval process for EditCheck specification sheet document includes: once the CDSS is created and draft annotated document is released, then the CDM team will start prepare EditCheck specification sheet. So the same should be reviewed internally by the DM team, clinical project manager and other relevant stakeholders like sponsors, statistician, etc. In case post review, if there are any changes or addition, then the same should be incorporated and reviewed again. Then again the same goes to the clinical project manager and other stakeholders for their review. If there are no changes, then the same would be sent for programming to the programmers. Data validation and user acceptance testing log. So data validation is performed in the form of UAT once EditCheck programming is complete. UAT process ensures the edit checks are programmed and performed as per the requirement of the study. UAT is a process used for testing the programmed edit checks in test environment. Test scripts are to be created which consist of both clean and dirty data. Creating clean and dirty data helps in assessing the quality and efficiency of the programmed edit checks. Clean data is the data that is valid, accurate, complete, consistent as per the protocol edit check specification throughout the entry of the data in the EDC system. So where the clean data, the edit checks will not be fired in the system. Dirty data is the data that is invalid and contains errors like incorrect spellings, punctuations, incorrect data associated with the CRF, incomplete and outdated data. Dirty data and clean data helps differentiate the type of data required, which is accurate and consistent for the clinical trial study protocol. So it's just an example how the layout of UAT log should looks like, which should have a test ID and rule ID or the check ID, which is coming from your EditCheck specification document. And you will have a patient ID on which particular patient the data EditCheck validation was checked, then the visit name, CRF name, which version of the CRF it was tested, and which question prompt or the item name. For example, if there are more than one data item are involved, then prerequisite form or prerequisite data would be mentioned. That is for the dependency questions. Whether the data is clean data or dirty data, the data type as well as the input would be mentioned, and the expected results also mentioned in the document. And post testing, the same would be updated with the actual results, whether the test is pass or fail. In case of the test is fail, again it would be sent for the programmer for their verification. If the program is not as per the logic, then they will reprogram it and same would be updated in the system for further testing. So the same is mentioned in this slide. The test ID is the test case ID data. Rule ID comes from the EDICHECK specification document. Patient ID again to identify which patient the testing was performed. And visit name or event name, the name is given to identify specific visit. Name given to identify CRF. And version number, which version of CRF is being used in the UAT process. And again item name, where the data point which needs to be captured in the CRF, prerequisite form, which is an interlinked with the data points associated with edit checks, prerequisite item data, then clean or dirty data, whether it is dirty data or clean data, accurate or inaccurate data. So those would be mentioned. Actual result is the output which appears on the screen after validation. Expected results are the output which is expected to appear on the screen as per the edit check document. And again, whether it is pass or fail, the query ID which is generated needs to be captured so that the programmer will check against the query ID. If the check fails, then comments, the tester of the UAT will start providing the comments in the section, whether any corrections are required or the confirmation from the test. UAT process for EDICHECK programming. After completion of EDICHECK programming, UAT issue log is created. So DM team creates the test patient data with clean and dirty data in the test database, and same is recorded in the UAT log document. DM team validates the issues identified as per the EDICHECK specification document for the rule or the checks. DM team also executes that UAT for actual results and validates clean and dirty data and states whether they are pass or fail in the UAT log. If it is failed, then UAT issue log will be generated. Data on these forms to be completed are interlinked with the data points or item data associated with the edit checks. If any issues are identified during the UAT process, then programmer will modify as per the UAT results. So revalidate until all the checks are passed. Once this process is completed, QC team will perform a random QC for 5% of the data or as requested by the sponsor. Once the QC is passed and post completion of UAT sign-off form is completed. So here this shows that EDICHECK programming process, the entire process. So prepare EC, that is your EDICHECK specification sheet, then reviewed by the relevant stakeholders. Any changes, then again incorporation. If no, then it would be sent for database programmer for programming purpose. Then they will upload the program to the test environment. The same would be tested. If again any changes are required, then it will goes to the database testing error log and incorporate changes in EDICHECK specification sheet, reprogramming. If there are no changes required, then notify the stakeholders about the completion of the process. So once this is done, then QC will be performed for random figures. If any changes, then again the process would be repeated and the same would be updated in the database testing error log. If there are no changes, then it is signed off and approval of AC programming is created. Then released to production for the particular edit check would be signed. Then the edit check would be uploaded to the database. That is your rules or the programmed part would be updated to your production database or your live database. During the course of study, in case in the contact phase, if any changes or additions are required, then the post-production change request form should be completed. Risk analysis will be performed because the existing check or the patient should not be affected on the same. So update the EDICHECK document, annotated document and other relevant documents should be updated, reprogrammed by the database programmer, and again it would be sent into or uploaded into the test environment. The further process is again repeated, like the DM team will perform the UAT, then would be notified to the relevant stakeholders and QC would be performed for the same. Review and approval of version control. So draft, it also the 0.1 version or 1.0 version, this also varies with the company standard process. When the EditCheck specification document is prepared, distributed for the internal team with a particular version name, then if there are any updates to it, the same would be verified and redistributed to the internal team with a increase of version or amendment to your version. Then the EditCheck specification document is internally reviewed and approved by the team. Then same is sent for sponsor for their approval. And if there are any comments are there, same would be updated in the draft incremental version. Once everything is clear and final, then the final document would be released. So if there are any amendments to the final document also, again, whether it is a minor change or major change, if the version number for minor change is different, then it would be amended accordingly. So if there are any revision, then post reapproval, the document will be released. The quality control for UAT is performed by selecting 5% of random edit checks from the test environment, or the percentages vary from study to study or sponsor to sponsor. And if any errors are identified, then the same would be reported to the lead TM for corrective action. And these errors and action taken are documented in the QC issue log and QC report. And we have discussed about this log and report multiple times. Then manual listings, this is the process and the preparation of listing and reports. TM team will pull out manual listing as per the study requirement. And if any manual checks needs to be raised on the system, that will be raised as per the edit check document. Thank you.